Right. Hello and welcome everybody to today's meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee. My name is Councillor Holly. I'll be chairing the committee this evening. We've got a couple of apologies from Mr. Lee and Mr. Binney, but otherwise I think we're all here. I'll just ask if any members have any declarations of interest to make. No? We've gone then to the minutes and action log, which is agenda item 2. Are there any comments on the minutes? Mr. Rose?
Yeah, just what sort of matter arising / request for update from Bryn. It talks about on page 9 the constitution coming to today's meeting. I believe it's coming for finalisation this Thursday, coming back on the 31st of this month, but it's now September full council instead of July full council. But Bryn, are you able to give an update on working group and constitution and stuff, if that's all right?
Absolutely, Chair. So yes, we are there or thereabouts with the council procedure rules. It's taken a substantial amount of time, but it's been gone through in great detail. We were hoping to have it back here. I'd circulated it for final comments, and it became clear there were still some points that we needed to clear off. So we have a constitution working group meeting on Thursday. And I'm hoping that will finalise it to a point we can bring it back to the next meeting, at least substantially completed. There'll doubtless be 1 or 2 points that will be sought. The clarification from the committee will be sought about its views, with a view to potentially taking it to an A&G meeting at the beginning of September, which is about 2 weeks and a day, I think it is, before the next council meeting. So we should be able to sign it off completely in September, in advance of it going to council in mid-September.
Okay, any other comments? Councillor Merritt?
Yeah, obviously I'm new to this committee, but is it possible to see where this constitution has got to?
Yeah, I'm happy. I can happily circulate the current version, Chair, to members. It's about 36 pages, but there's a lot of track changes. It's only so you can see where things have moved about. So I'll send that round. I can probably do that while we're in the meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
That's right.
Yeah, I think if you're able to circulate that to all A&G members and anybody on the working group, it'd be good if this is the last meeting on Thursday to finalise what we're currently taking through, and for A&G to get a bit of visibility of it, to get it closed off this month. I know we've got the rest of the constitution still to do, but that full council procedures bit would be good to not have many outstanding points if we can do it.
Okay, any comments on the action log? I think there's a few which, I don't think there's many which are sort of past their due date. One of the statements of accounts will be emailed to members in February, presumably. Do we know whether that happened? Presumably it did. So could we check whether it did, and if it did, change it to was emailed to members. And there's a few which I think are coming to this meeting. Other than that, any other comments, Councillor Merritt?
Sorry, could I ask about on page 2, item 42.
Page 12 on the call.
Right, okay. There's provide members with a breakdown of the 2021-2 and 2022-3 member allowances and expenses. Just wondering why that's taken so long, because we've actually got another year completed since then.
Presumably Debbie can take you through the saga of the accounts for the last.
Yeah, we maybe won't go into the. I know it's a short agenda, but we won't spend all the time talking about the saga of getting the accounts signed off. I don't know, Councillor Merritt, I'm afraid. I'll have to check. Helen's on leave today, but I'm not sure. I don't think it's that difficult, so we should be able to provide it. It wasn't requested. Oh, it was January this year, wasn't it? Yeah, I don't know, I'm afraid. I think it's just got lost in the accounts and the year-end stuff, so I'll pick that one up again. I'll work through and just make sure we've done everything.
Is it worth adding 23, 24 to that? I mean, it's all on the website, isn't it, as well? Isn't it? Okay, Councillor Rose?
Yeah, that one, and number 46, which also says February 2024 is the deadline and hasn't been completed. We're coming out the back of us asking some specific questions of the accounts of why one number 1 year was significantly different to the previous year and looking at financial risk of the council and what we might need to consider in the future and stuff. So it was a request for a breakdown of the numbers behind the numbers from that, is where it came from, if that helps.
Thank you. And I think Helen's not here, so Debbie, if you're able to. Okay, anything else? No, I'll sign those later on. We move on then to item 3, which is public participation. And we've got one member of the public speaking through this evening, which is Gwen Swinburne. So you know the drill. Shall I give you a warning at 30 seconds?
No, there's no need, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. With so much business outstanding, the lightness of the agenda is concerning. The Director of Governance committed on record at the last meeting to bring matters forward so that this would not be a lame duck committee, which it certainly appears to be. Can we have an explanation, please, of why this is so? Members, last year, the statutory accounts inspection process had to restart because the Director of Governance neither produced nor published the annual governance statement, a required element of the accounts. This is a parallel assurance that both finance and governance are fit for purpose. The law requires a 30-day working day inspection period where you, citizens and journalists, can ask for any evidence to support the assurances asserted, whether finance or governance. This year, it appears that no one except for me knows that the inspection period has started. As usual, Debbie has been really helpful. The problem is that no one knows the inspection process is happening, or indeed is nearly over. Not the members, not journalists, nor citizens. A public notice was inserted deep on the council website, but nothing else. If we were to accept that the council met the legal minimum, shoving a notice deep in the website, which we really should not, we certainly cannot accept the council met its own corporate governance code, which states in principle B, ensuring openness and comprehensive stakeholder engagement. It states to encourage and assist citizens to inspect the accounts in accordance with the regulations. In the interest of transparency, it cannot be acceptable that no one except for me knows of this process. The right thing to do would be to restart and ensure the Director of Governance undertakes an open process to be codified and put into the Constitution and forward plan. Chair, on a concerning matter on the last committee, where one independent person appears unhappy, may I ask what mediation, such as meetings, have taken place to resolve any perceived or actual issues? May I ask the exact terms of reference for independent persons to be circulated to understand what their role is, to comment on substance, act as school prefect, or what? It is pleasing to know there is a strong pool of applicants willing to undertake these duties as a public service with no remuneration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think we'll pick up the annual government statement in the Keep Corporate Risks section. And the other 2 issues we'll talk about at the work plan. That makes sense. Okay. And if we can move on then to item 4, which is key corporate risks. I think Debbie will working us through this.
Yeah, I'll do a brief introduction and then just open up for questions. So this is the outturn report for the previous financial year, 2023-24. Not too much has changed. We've updated a number of the actions and issues and actions and controls. Paragraphs 15 to 22 outline those kind of changes that we've made since the last, since your last report. Hopefully reflect, I think, some of the comments that this committee made around some of those risks and additional actions that you felt would be appropriate. So they've been revised and updated. There's been no other change of no new risks, no increased risks or anything like that. Everything's been sort of pretty much business as usual. So I'll do my best to answer any questions that you have, but I might have to take some away to get answers for, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Mason?
Thank you. I suppose just on KCR 2 about governance and freedom of information requests, and that being down again as a kind of probable problem. Obviously, the mitigation doesn't really remove it down to anything, just like 1 point. I don't know what, given that we had the enforcement notice that was served, where I suppose where do we go long term? We don't want to be just hovering around, I suppose, that space where it's always going to be an issue.
I think if I'm being brutally honest, councillor, it will always be an issue. The Information Commissioner's Office has recently changed its procedures without, I won't say without consultation, but simply by informing us that they are halving the amount of time that they are going to accept responses from us. So previously, if somebody referred something to the ICO, it was a 4-week return period for us once they contacted us. They've decided to change that to 2 weeks. The reality is that the ICO sets its standards, as do many bodies. The council is strapped for resources. And there will have to come a point at which those discussions take place as to what does the council want to place priority on, whether it be, meeting the 100%, or, I mean, in terms of returns, we actually do quite well in terms of the number that we respond to within time. Or do we, prefer to prioritise safeguarding children and adults? We will get to that sort of discussion at some point. So there will always be a danger. Some of KCR2 relates obviously to information governance risks for data breaches. And again, that is, every authority in the country will have that as one of its key risks, because it can be something as simple as a slip of an email that suddenly gives rise to a massive data breach. Conversely, it can be foreign agents hacking in. Now, we know that one of our neighbouring councillors has had that. And there's very little you can do other than make sure that your IT systems are up to scratch, that your firewall is updated and is effective. Beyond that, we are looking to the vigilance of individuals to ensure that they adhere to the training that they're provided, and to operate common sense to a large extent. As I say, in terms of the overall return rates for freedom of information requests, for example, we hover around the 85 to 90% within time. That's not a bad return rate when you talk to some other councils. I was talking to another one on Monday, where their return rate is 45 to 50% within the statutory timetable. As yet, they haven't been picked up on it. They will at some point, because that's the way that the system works. All we can do is continue to emphasise within the council how important it is that we keep dealing with these. But beyond that, it comes down to an issue of resourcing.
What's the kind of follow up then? If we go through the same process again with an enforcement notice, is there any risk of kind of financial penalties?
Potentially there would be. It would depend on the circumstances. And as I say, if you got to that stage, there is then a question mark about what arguments we can make to the ICO around resourcing. Because the reality is that councils up and down the country are facing resourcing challenges. And we have so many different regulators all imposing different regulatory regimes on us. What would your preference be? Do you want to ensure 100% compliance and not safeguard children and adults, or do you want to safeguard the important part? And unfortunately, that's a decision for council. That's not something that I can take unilaterally, because I have a defined budget.
And I suppose having those conversations early is probably more important than, is there anything going on lobbying wise from professional bodies or councils or the LGA or anything around these changes that you've said?
In terms of lobbying, I don't know. I know that we certainly made our displeasure at the changes in timetable known to the ICO, but the ICO is itself the body that makes its own decisions. So effectively, it unilaterally imposed the changes on us. We are left dealing with that.
Any further questions? Over to Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you very much. Yeah, still on KCR2, and obviously that incident with the neighbouring council was particularly concerning, and we of course hope that nothing like that would ever happen in terms of hacking in York. I just wanted to know, is there any sort of early lessons learned that have come out of that particular incident that we might be aware of to help mitigate that here in York?
Not that I've seen so far. There will doubtless be a deep dive, because some of our data was stored on their servers because of. I won't go into the details of where the cyber attack happened, because some of that is still potentially under police investigation. But we know that the ICO has closed its investigation without any action. So they obviously didn't find that there was any negligence on the part of the authority. I think it is now a fact of life that in that case, they believe it was Russian agents. who were just randomly hacking into any system they could find. You know, who knows, but it seems to have been a statewide thing rather than, you know, some kid sat in his bedroom playing about. I think the advantage for us is we do keep statistics on the number of attempted penetrations of our firewall, the number of spam attacks we get. We filter out hundreds of thousands a year. It's quite astonishing the number of times that we are under attack. Thus far, we ensure that we keep our firewall up to date and that all our servers are secured. But, you know, as we saw a number of years ago at Redcar in Cleveland, if it goes wrong, it goes catastrophically wrong. And certainly Redcar, from discussions with the MO at Redcar at the time, essentially they went back to paper and pen for 4 weeks because nothing worked. Because somebody got into the system, implanted a ransomware bot on it, and shut the entire council system down. It's a constant risk. And our IT services is well aware of it and does its damnedest to keep on top of it. But it's that arms race between the security side of things, IT services, and, you know, Microsoft and Ubisoft and various other providers providing the firewalls, and the hackers developing ways to get around them.
Okay, Councillor Fisher.
Yeah, I noticed the last section of the fifth column. It says members now for standard ICT equipment which help to ensure appropriate information security, information governance. Now, clearly, we all use now, or should use, gov.uk emails. Would it compromise the council potentially in terms of security if any councillor was to not use that? And if so, how would we tackle that? I won't go into any more detail than that.
So the difficulty with councillors not using a gov.uk email account is emails that are sent via the york.gov.uk system are all stored through our servers. We can therefore say with a degree of certainty that information is secure and that it isn't compromised. We also know where it's stored, because obviously depending on the email system that you use and the server that you use, your emails could be stored anywhere in the world. It's just the way things are now. So, you know, if you have a Gmail account, it may be stored in California on their servers there. So the danger then becomes that you are, as an individual, processing information offshore, which is something that is a specific issue, but also that, you know, your personal account may be hacked in the way that it's much more difficult to hack your gov.uk account, because to hack your council email account, they've got to come through our servers first, and we've got the up-to-date firewalls that people may not have at home. And I know that there was some previous sensitivity about councillors using the gov.uk email account because council officers can spy on it. The reality is, I suppose, in that twofold. Firstly, we haven't got the time. We're all far too busy anyway. But secondly, if it was required, for example, for a freedom of information request, we would look to approach the individual and explain that they need to produce the emails. And if not, we would have to seek a court order for production. Because even though they're not using a council email address, they are conducting council business through that email. And therefore, it forms part of our records. So this, I'm conscious there was a second part of your question as to what risks there were. Some of them I've already outlined. And I think there's also the danger that you just lose things in a way that, you know, the council's emails are backed up regularly. I think it's every night that the whole council system is backed up. So if an email vanishes, you can usually track it down somewhere. You don't necessarily have that guarantee with offline systems, as I know to personal cost, because I deleted a number of emails years ago and suddenly I can't get access to any of them. So it is by far and away the most secure thing to do, to run it through our system, and then we all know that it's secure.
So what action would you take if you found that any councillor was not complying with that?
The difficulty we have is I can't physically force somebody to use our kit. We can restrict that individual's access by saying that we will not deal with information from a private email account as a councillor and will therefore deal with it on the basis of a private individual. And we would still continue to deal on that basis. I can't force somebody, but all we can do is continue to encourage and continue to ensure that we use the system as we're supposed to.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's what got Hillary Clinton into trouble, isn't it? Councillor Rose?
Yeah, I mean, and everybody else that has split business and personal. I guess some interesting comments around all of those, and thanks for giving those answers. From an IT security background, I've got some further thoughts which I'll share directly on phishing and greater member training around IT security and behaviours around security, and business continuity planning, which isn't referenced in the KCR, but if we need to revert to paper and pen for 4 weeks, do we actually know what we're doing, and do we have a plan and a break glass for that situation? But I'll take it all offline and I'll drop you an email. But yes, if there might be a circumstance in which we have to cope without a system for a period of time, do we know what we're doing when that system is not available? And again, in IT, routine matters, of course, to have all of that in place. In the council, there may be some areas where we don't have as much depth on that, but I'll take it offline.
And obviously, we have business continuity plans. Every team has them. Every department has them. It's just the challenge of how you work around. If your council email account isn't available, then what? If your records aren't available, then what? Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Whitcroft, no? Councillor Mason?
Very chivalrous. The new one about the priorities of the mayor not aligning with the council or city. I presume they're going to have priorities that don't align with the city, because it's such a, such a diverse patch, rural, coastal, everything else. I don't know. I wonder what was the thinking behind that? Was there anything specifically that we thought there might be a conflict on?
No, nothing specific. It's just reflecting that when you've got a new combined authority and a new mayor with money, and like you said, priorities should align. There should be no reason why priorities of the mayor don't align with those of the city council. But as you say, it's a wider patch. There will be priorities across the wider county, and so it's just it's noting that I think it was this committee that asked us to include it as a risk last time. So that's why we incorporated it, was the issues that I think that members of this committee had raised, that we felt it was important to register it as something that we needed to keep an eye on.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Rose?
Yeah, there was on KCR 9 on page 47, just looking at it. This isn't something that's changed at all. It was just something that occurred to me as I was looking at it. It's all about resilience and cohesion and community engagement, and all of the actions are things like community safety strategy, etc. But I notice it says maintaining strong relationships with parish councils, but doesn't reference other community groups. But it also doesn't have any ongoing action plan reference for greater engagement with community groups. And I think there probably is action going on, or if there isn't, there should be, that should probably be referenced in the risk, because the fact that it's still listed as a major net impact score of 19 for community engagement feels like something that's much more in our control than some of the other risks we've been talking about, where it's harder to bring the score down. So I just something to take offline for the officers, I think.
Sorry, so that is saying that you think that we've scored that too high?
Well, KCR 9 has only gone down from 20 to 19 after all of the policies that are referenced in the controls. And it only references parish councils, for example. Obviously, we've got not only residents associations and so on, but we've also got lots of individual community groups.
Yeah.
But also we're doing things to try and directly engage with residents. So maybe we've overscored the net, but also if we haven't, we should have some more actions in place than just the safety strategy, was my thinking. I'm not sure which way that falls, but it's just something to raise for you to look at.
Yeah, so have we overscored the net? Yeah, I think it's probably reflective of, we might have overscored the net, we can have a look at that, but there's no new money here. So I think it's possibly also reflective of
course,
we can have a lot of strategies, and actually the more community groups you have, the bigger the risk in that respect, because it's more people to manage, isn't it? So maybe it's reflective of that. So I'll go away and look at the detail.
I mean, the other point, I guess, is if the relationship with parish council is more significant than other groups, and that's why it's referencing the other ones aren't. Maybe there's a concern there around uneven democracy between the areas that have parish councils and don't and stuff. And maybe there's more conversation to be had around that. So again, it's more something for you to have a ponder on. If there are additional actions, then great. If the score is different than it is here, then great. But if not, probably it is worthy of a conversation another time. Probably not for this committee, but.
Thank you. Councillor Merritt.
Thank you. Reading the papers and the covering paper about KCR2, where you've taken the health and safety out to the HR one, which I can quite understand. You've also proposing to narrow the title and looking at the detail behind it. The detailed content is primarily around information governance. Where is general governance then? You know, council's undertaking proper legal procedures, all those types of things.
Are you saying that's a key corporate risk?
To its reputation.
Yeah. I don't know, Bryn, did we have that?
I think the reality is that general governance is not considered to be a key corporate risk because the council generally adheres to its governance requirements. Whereas, we absolutely do. Now, you know, if you're looking at what catastrophic error or what catastrophic thing can go wrong through general governance that would cause the council a significant financial risk, the answer is very little. Whereas if you think about the information governance risk, quite aside from fines from the ICO and data breaches, you've got massive reputational issues. So that's why it's not listed as a standard, a key risk. That's not to say that it's not covered by departmental risk registers and things like that. But these are the council's significant risks.
Oh, can I beg to disagree? I mean, without going over things that happened under previous administrations, there were some quite big issues that raised big public concerns, reputational damage to this council. It seems remarkable that there shouldn't be anything in here.
I think the point, if I may,
as a major corporate risk about
with that
council proper procedure, process, and so on.
They are one-off risks as opposed to an ongoing, continuing issue. So, you know, particularly if you think about the doubtless the issue that was raised through the second PIR, that was an individual decision taken by an individual councillor that caused that risk. Now, no, sorry, but that's the reality of it. That is not an institutional risk. That is individual councillor behaviour.
Well, I mean, councillors aren't the only people who take decisions. There's officer decision, there's accounting for those and all the rest of it. I mean, there are big issues in terms of governance and proper process. It doesn't strike me as right that they shouldn't be covered.
I think that I understand the point that you're making, Councillor. I think it's because it underlies everything that we do, so they're part of every risk. I think maybe what might be appropriate is for us to go back and have another look at whether it should be information governance, or whether we should incorporate some of the risks that you talk about around decision making and following due process. But I think they would also pick up, so if it was an issue where we hadn't followed proper process, and therefore we didn't get value for money, and then that would pick up either the financial pressures or the capital programme. If it was a staffing matter, it would come under workforce and capacity. And so I think because it comes under everything we do, it's part of every risk. So I think maybe, Bryn, if we just go back and have a look at what we've got in the KCRs and make sure we've picked up any of those governance issues as part of those key corporate risks. I agree with Bryn, it's not my view as an officer is it wouldn't be a key corporate risk on its own around governance and decision making, but you're absolutely right, if we get it wrong, it's a problem. So I think maybe we go back and look at the information governance, because in a summary we do call it just governance actually. So maybe we've just gradually sort of moved over time and we just need to go back and have another look at that. We can have a look at that.
Councillor Rose.
Yeah, I mean, Thanks for highlighting it, Dave, because I hadn't spotted that it did change name to information governance this time around. It is in paragraph 16 on page 24, and then it is in the title of the section, but it previously was always called governance. And so I slightly disagree with you, Bryn, that we haven't seen it as an issue, because it was an issue until this month, as a key corporate risk. And I do think that there is an inherent institutional risk that poor governance can lead to significant effects to the council, even if the probability is low. I think that is a fair assessment. Whether we've now diverted that, all the different bits in that section now only refer to information security, and therefore it does make sense to update that, but then governance falls out and maybe it's part of every box or not. I think there's perfectly fair arguments in there, but I think that is a worthy call out to say it should stay as governance and not just switch to information governance, or that should be reflected appropriately elsewhere. But I don't think that it's insulting our officers to say there is an inherent risk that people might not follow governance at some point, and that can have consequences for the council, personally.
Okay, I think you've heard the comments of the committee.
Oh, absolutely,
I
Jeff.
think it's going back, perhaps having a look about how that could be reflected next time, and we can talk about it then and see whether or not we're happier with what comes out of that. Okay. Sorry, was somebody else? Councillor Mason?
I was just going to add to that, I suppose, really in other ways around things like, and when I first started on A&G, there was issues with invoices being paid to a contractor and things like that. So it's not just, I suppose, decision-making processes at that higher level, but there is the stuff that goes on. And I know obviously things like we've moved to no PO, no pay, and how those are enforced and the potential consequences that has. So I think you're right. There's a real broad set of those kind of everyday decisions, but just do need to be reflected somewhere.
Okay. Any further comments? Councillor Merritt?
On KCR 10, the workforce capacity, we are, as some people are suggesting, we're going through our third, not industrial, perhaps isn't the right word, revolution in terms of, the advent of AI, continued digitization of many work functions and so on. What I noticed in here is there didn't seem to be particularly strong coverage of how we deal with that, training, upskilling, those types of issues, and us being in fact up to speed in the most efficient way. Now I know that's been tackled, but there's no risk around it. And I would have thought, just thinking of my own work experience over many decades and how much change has taken place in ensuring staff are upskilled periodically as required is actually quite an important issue and a risk that should, I think, also be in that list, detailed list.
Yeah, no, I'll incorporate that, and I'll speak to Helen in terms of how we can incorporate those. I mean, we do talk about recruitment and retention and succession planning and lack of a qualified workforce, but yeah, it is a different issue, right? So yeah, we can have a look at that. Thank you.
Okay. And you've also got a KCR around the local plan. Clearly, there are some massive changes afoot nationally in terms of the planning framework. Now, it may be that the timescales don't interfere. I would have thought that was a fairly big potential risk that perhaps needs flagging.
Yeah, I would imagine that the next iteration of this report will include those things, particularly around things like planning, and you're right, absolutely, wider political context. Thank you.
Councillor Mason?
Thanks. It might be the type of thing that gets picked up on a department, whatever you call it, risk report, whatever else. But obviously things like the green bin, where you've got kind of multiple faceted things around kind of payment, around service delivery, around the potential other impacts that come from it if it isn't successful. Is that the type of thing that will be picked up? And obviously reputation and all of those things. Obviously there's kind of different facets to it that fit under different things, but I suppose where would that type of thing be covered? Is that something a particular department would have a risk register that would cover it? Like the waste team or something? Yeah,
we have departmental risk registers, but there's also project specific risk registers. So I'm not sure with that one whether it'll be on the departmental risk register, but each major project has its own risk register as well. So that kind of thing would be picked up on there. And obviously it would only come up to like a key corporate risk if it was something significant and ongoing. As Bryn said, it wouldn't be like for a one-off thing, like introducing a new policy, but if it would be more the You know, project management across the council might be a risk, but the project management of an individual project wouldn't necessarily appear as a risk.
Okay. Just picking up as well the comments from the public speaker on the inspection period.
Oh, to this, yeah. Well,
shoehorn it in here.
yeah, I can pick that up. The 30-day inspection period did start, I think it was the 10th of, well, it ends on the 19th of July, so it might have started on the 10th of June, can't remember the exact date. But we did put a notice on the website, and the comms team did tweet that the accounts were open for inspection. That's more than we're obliged to do. The legislation only requires us to publish a notice on the website, which we did. We published a notice on the day the accounts were due to say that they weren't ready. As you know, there was a slight delay, and then we published another notice on the day that the accounts were ready to say, here they are, they're open for inspection until the 19th of July. And like I say, the comms team did do a tweet on the 10th of June. So we have met the legislative requirements of that.
Is it feasible to extend it? Obviously, councillors and people are very busy and totally missed. Or at least I did.
I haven't got the capacity within the finance team to carry it on for another 30 days. Otherwise, we're jeopardising the council's budget process and general financial management. So I would be reluctant to extend it because there's no requirement to. We're not obliged to. We've met the requirements of the audit and accounts regulations. It was tweeted. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it to you all. Apologies, I must not have done. Obviously, got caught up with the election. I would expect people to know that when we publish our accounts, there's a 30-day inspection period. And like I say, we did tweet it. It is on the website. I don't know what else really we can do.
I think in terms of, I hear what you're saying in terms of this year, but in terms of next year, is there, could councillors be emailed? Could it be included in?
Yes, sorry, absolutely. Yeah, I will absolutely take away that for an improvement for next year is to make more people aware of it. And, I think probably got caught up in the election a little bit as well in terms of just the general kind of chaos around that time. But yes, absolutely, a takeaway that we can do better in terms of publicising it more widely. So yeah, and emailing at least as a bare minimum councillors of the committee, but all councillors to make them aware of that. Yeah.
Because I think there is a consultation section on the website, isn't there? I don't know if it's on there, but that might be somewhere else to pop it as well. Okay. Councillor Mason and then Councillor Rose.
Thanks. I suppose I get that, Debbie, but at the same point, if it's your kind of bread and butter and you're working in that field all the day and you make not a mistake, I don't want to say it in a bad way, but you forget to send an email or whatever else, or the election is going on and it's all busy and everything else, then I suppose that everyone else is in an even worse position, that it's not even something they'd probably be thinking about. What have we done in the past? Have we sent a press release out? Have we put a notice on the pin board outside? What I suppose has our bread and butter always been that we do a tweet and it goes on the website, or have we done more than that in the past?
We've not often done more than that. I've probably the thing that I probably haven't done is email members of this committee to tell them that we published the accounts. I thought I'd mentioned it at a meeting. I obviously didn't, so apologies for that. I thought I'd said that they were going to be late, but we would publish and they would be on the website. So that's my oversight. So we haven't done anything other than publish a notice on the website. The comms team will tweet it. They may have done a press release in the past, I'm not quite sure. But generally just on something on social media and a notice on the website. We've never printed anything out and put it on the notice board. But not while I've been responsible for it anyway. So
Councillor Rose.
Yeah, I think it was mentioned on the statement of accounts training in tail end of May. So I think it was raised by you, but echoing the points here, it's great if we were told and we remember and there's a tweet or whatever, but I think it is an important thing, and it'd be good to flag to the public in ways they're actually going to notice. I don't mean that in a harsh way, but if they miss a tweet, I don't see anything that's on Twitter anyway, but even if it's on something I am following, I'm only going to see 1 in 4 posts. It's easy to miss, but I'm just wondering if we can formalise that action in the action plan as something that definitely is returning to us with, here's the updated, this is what we're planning on doing and how it's going to be tracked. And I think it does make sense to put it on the consultation page. It's a consultation of sorts, even though we haven't done it in the past. No harm in strengthening it.
Okay, Councillor Merritt, and then I don't want to flog this too much, but then Councillor Fisher.
I just point out that putting it on social media and on the website does discriminate a little bit against those people who don't use computers, because there is a substantial part of our elderly population who don't use computers at all. And it is a slight problem. How do we publicise them? Perhaps a notice in the press, because a lot of them do read the press. put something in the press that, you know, a little notice, and then it's up to them.
Maybe at this point, actually, just worth reminding you that whilst it is the accounts on deposit and open for inspection, people can ask me questions whenever they like. So it's not as if it's people's only chance. If somebody wants to send in an FOI about how much did you spend on an X, Y, and Z, they can do that at any time and we will answer it. So I don't want you to go away with the impression that it's a 30-day slot, and if you miss it, you miss it. You've got to wait another 12 months, because that's not the case. People can ask questions at any time. The importance of this 30-day period is this is the period in which you can raise an objection to the accounts, which is slightly different. And I recognise that is a one-time shot for this 30 days. But, you know, please don't go away with the impression that you can't ask questions about the accounts at any other point during the year, because you can't.
Councillor Merritt?
Yeah. When I was on the council previously, those annual account publications were quite important. You know, there were a small number of residents who took particular interest in them and often raised quite challenging questions and flagged issues that as councillors haven't clocked. So I think it is an important process. So, you know, a press release, I think, would go well. The other point I wanted to make, I've always been aware of the annual accounts. The governance statement is apparently now meant to accompany it, is something I wasn't really particularly aware of. Now, it may have been a change requirement, but can we make sure if we're publicising the annual accounts are available, that the governance, you know, it also makes it clear that the governance.
Yeah, the annual governance statement is part of the accounts, but I think we'll make it clear that it's incorporated.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Rose?
Yeah, just a tiny point to say that this is obviously going to come back to our committee this year. So we're talking about what can we do in future years, but this year members of the public can come and do public participation when the statement of accounts and the annual governance statement, etc., come to this committee, which is 31st of July at the moment. We'll see when we get to the work plan if it stays there, but you know, people and not just directly engage, but they can directly engage through this committee. If they've got concerns they want to raise with us, they can email us as well as members, etc.
Okay, thank you.
And it's probably worth pointing out, sorry, Chair, that the accounts are open for inspection until the 19th of July. So all is not lost. If anybody does want to ask us questions, they've got until the 19th of July to do that. And if they're unhappy, raise an objection with the auditor.
Yeah, and what better publicity could there be than the
Exactly.
Audit and Governance Committee, which I'm sure the residents are all glued to.
Absolutely.
But I think it's a case for next year if we could perhaps think about how we could spread it more widely and things like that. Okay, we move on then to item 5, which is the Treasury Management Annual Reports.
Yep. So this is the Treasury Management Outturn report again for 23-24, and it outlines the Treasury activity during the year. Just to remind you, it is a statutory report required by the Prudential Code. It's due to be considered by executive next week, so it's here for kind of your review and pre-scrutiny, if you like. You've got a brief covering report and then the executive report as an annex. So the report outlines a brief economic update, along with interest rate forecasts, that kind of thing, provided by our Treasury Management advisors. Probably also worth reminding members of the committee that our Treasury Management strategy of late has been to use our cash balances to delay borrowing. That's worked relatively well. Strategy's worked well over the recent years. We have now started to borrow again. You'll see in the report, I think it was 30 million we borrowed towards the end of the financial year. Which is in line with our expectations, in line with what we'd include in the budget. It's what we expected to do. Just to point out that interest rates were still a little bit higher than we would like them to be. So what we've done is we've just borrowed for 12 months and then we'll refinance again in 12 months. Hopefully interest rates will be a bit lower. If not, we'll just do it for another 12 months. We won't borrow for 20 years at these relatively higher interest rates. So that's the strategy that we've taken. Again, the Prudential indicators are included at Annex 1, and there's nothing of concern to draw your attention to. So it's just here for your questions. If there are any issues or concerns that you want to raise, I can the report's published tomorrow for executive, but if there are comments from this committee that you want executive to see, I can raise those verbally at the committee if there's anything you want me to say.
Okay, Councillor Merritt.
Yeah, figure 4 in Annex 1 shows quite large debt maturity in this current financial year. It's page 13 in the,
Yeah, page 73. It's all right.
when you go into individual annexes, it doesn't seem to give the page number.
The full thing.
Yeah, so figure 4, the quite high figure for the current year, and that's reflecting what you were just talking about, is it that we, in effect, we're accumulating increasing short-term borrowing. Can I just ask whether there are particular risks with that? If, you know, we're all anticipating interest rates are going to go down, but then something else global happens and it actually goes in the opposite direction, and then you've got.
Yeah, I mean, treasury management's all about risk. It's an art more than a science some days. Yeah, all the indications are that interest rates won't go any higher, but you're right, something else could happen. Somebody could invade somebody else. We don't know that, but based on the information that we know, we do expect interest rates to be lower in 12 months' time. If they're not, we'll have to refinance again at that kind of level. What we would normally do is in that maturity profile, we would look to fill in some of those gaps to make that as smooth a chart as possible. But just because interest rates we felt they were on the cusp of coming down. We've probably all been saying that for a while, but yeah, we'll see where we are in 12 months.
Okay, Councillor Whitcroft.
Yes, thank you very much. Similar question, sort of related, I guess, to sort of net debt and interest rates. I understand the strategy outlined is that we use cash to pay down debt rather than sort of re-borrowing. I'm guessing that the view is if interest rates fall, we'll be in a position where we might be able to use that cash instead for other spending and maybe to accommodate a slightly higher level of debt. Is that something that would be the vision at the moment?
We would only borrow what we need, so we wouldn't over borrow, if you like, to have money to invest. Usually, we do sometimes have money to invest, but that's often we've borrowed expecting a capital expenditure and it's delayed or deferred or something like that, or some other money has come in. So we wouldn't generally borrow just so that we've got money to invest, because if you borrow, you've got the cost of carry. So as soon as you borrow, you start to pay the interest, and it would be, you would earn interest on it, but you'd also be paying interest on it. And those two might even each other out. It would be unusual, I think, for you to make a bit of a profit on that. You might occasionally, but no, we wouldn't have that as a strategy generally.
Okay.
Yeah, just a couple more questions on this specific area. Thanks very much. So the savings rate has more than doubled, which is good news. Obviously, rising interest rates go both ways. But with the view, you know, as we've said, that interest rates might lower. I don't know whether it would be. Is there an idea that some of our investments we could potentially sort of make last a bit longer or get that locked in higher interest rate if we were to move to something more like fixed term deposits? I know that we've got no fixed term deposits on page 30, page 68.30, apologies. So I don't know whether there's any view that we could take advantage of higher interest rates at the moment, so that in the future we get a better payout.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. We in terms of our management of Treasury, as I think I said, I'm sure you're aware, security, liquidity, yield are our, importance. So it's been about liquidity really at the moment. It's been just in terms of the capital programme and being able to forecast our cash flow more accurately. So there is a point. If we've got money and we know we don't need it for a period, we will lock it in. But as I said, because we tend to only borrow when we need it, it's not available for a longer term investment. Does that make sense? So we tend to keep it quite liquid and then not have the cost of carry.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Thank you. Just thought I'd flag that up. And then just the final point, very simple question. Internal debt, as mentioned on page 71, presumably when one council department would borrow from another, is that sort of roughly what internal debt is referring to? Point 42, page 71. Internal borrowing, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, no, that is just using our cash balances, so that we call it internal borrowing because it's sort of like we're borrowing from ourselves. Yeah, sorry, that's just a bit of an accounting term, but yeah, it just means that we've funded it from cash. We've funded as much as we can from our existing balances because we've been delaying borrowing as long as possible. That's all that means. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No, happy to move on then to item 6, which is the work plan. And has already been noted, had quite a light agenda today, but I think that's going to come back. So I guess, Bryn, if you're able to perhaps outline any issues in what we've got before us or anything to
Certainly,
highlight.
Chair. So obviously what you'll have at the currently scheduled 31st of July meeting is a number of quite meaty items to discuss. There'll be the item on the Salvation Army contract, which will be coming to that meeting. You'll also have the Constitution, as well as draft statement of accounts. There's an external audit report coming, and you've got various other things that are in the usual pipeline. It could be a long meeting. And I would also note that given that the Salvation Army report is due here and the responsible director will not be available that night, they're their own leave, and potentially the constitutional changes will be here and I am not available that night. I do wonder whether the committee might want to think about, do you want to push that meeting back a week or so to make sure that the two responsible directors are present? In terms of timing, I'm not sure that there is anything on there. Probably the only thing that you could clearly slip would be the update on the member training, because it's not something that has a statutory deadline. But again, it's then a choice as to whether or not the committee would like it to come at that stage, or whether you prefer that to slip to perhaps the early September meeting. Obviously, there'll be a pressure from Debbie to get the draft accounts reviewed, and likewise external audit. And obviously you've got the annual internal audit report and the associated audit self-assessment. So there are all things that need to be at that meeting. So it's then a question of what the committee would like to do in terms of timing. Now, we don't need an answer at that now. It's something you can happily take away and have a think about. I think we checked and discovered that the 8th of August, which is a Thursday evening, is available in here. And we can look to move that back, but obviously it depends on all members' availability. It's no good the officers all being available if the members aren't.
I mean, is there any value in splitting the meeting and having one on the 8th and one on the 31st?
Yeah, I was going to make the exact same suggestion, Chair, particularly given that two directors may not be available for the 31st. If we can do the things that may not require their attendance on the 31st, and then potentially looking towards the 8th of August for things regarding the the additional items that were mentioned. I think splitting might be more effective. Of course, that depends on members' availability, but I support that suggestion.
Councillor Rose, and then
Yeah,
Councillor Nathan.
I'd support that too. I think that if there are things we can do, it obviously depends if we can do things on the agenda item, but audit progress report, which probably could slip to September, actually, the progress report one. But the other two audit items probably don't need us to have other officers present, especially if the following week we can ask questions to the officers who aren't there at that point in time, or ditto for any of the other some of the other points. So yeah, I think we definitely don't want to slip the Salvation Army conversation any further than we already have. It's already slipped more than we'd want it to. Ditto for some of the other points around the Constitution. It's been a long time coming. LJ recommendations, and along with that, the corporate improvement action plan framework, etc. All that stuff. It'd be good for us to try and not push it into September. If we can do that over two meetings, it feels like it's more than one meeting's worth anyway, trying to, even if it was possible on the 31st of July. So yeah, certainly support that.
If I can then, Chair, perhaps the thing to do is for the 31st of July, have the first 5 reports that are listed there, which is the external audit, the draft statement of accounts, the 2 from Verital, and the member training report. And then on the 8th of August, we'll bring the Salvation Army report, the Constitution, And that's the two meaty ones that you'll doubtless want to have some discussion on. And that gives you a broader time period to talk about those.
Does that include the LGA report? Because you say member training, in here it's listed as one item. I'm not sure why it's listed as one item, because the LGA recommendations, member training is part of one of them. But I think the LGA recommendations in general is a much bigger thing.
My understanding is that it's been written as a single report. I can go away and look. Obviously, it's not my report that's being written, so I can go away and check on that and see what the intention is with that.
Okay, Councillor Mason.
Thanks. I'm on holiday on the 8th of August. It doesn't work for me, but I just wanted to say it's a bit disappointing that 3 weeks before a meeting, we're told that, you know, 2 directors are on holiday. I think we should have had a bit more courtesy and been told in advance, as we've known. I imagine at some point we put that on the work plan for that point. Obviously, we canvassed all the dates for the committee before we set them, and obviously we've already moved to full council in a few weeks' time. But you know, these are important things that we're all working around trying to make it happen, and it's hard then to give us that opportunity to try and be there when you want to, you know, when we have to kind of come up with a second date and try and discuss it. So, you know, I hope in future we can try and, you know, solve these problems as soon as we can, because, you know, with 3 weeks notice to find out that 2 key people aren't going to be there at a meeting is disappointing.
I suppose all I would say is that, as the intention was to bring particularly the constitution report tonight, and unfortunately in the final process of emailing around councils, it became clear that further work was required. So until last week, I think it's fair to say, Councillor Rose, we weren't aware that it was going to have to slip.
But even, you know, you're the senior officer responsible for this committee. I imagine we must canvass your availability when we set the dates as well. You know, it's those type of things, whether it's the subject or not. I suppose we'd always want you to be at these committees if you were available.
If you're happy to arrange the committees around my holidays, that's absolutely fine.
Well, I arrange my holidays around what committee dates I'm given. So, you know, we want it to work for everybody.
Okay, I think the point's been made, and I think at the moment all we can do is look to try and split that meeting as suggested, but obviously going forward it would be useful if we could try and stick to the meetings and dates, but we've never managed so far, so do our best. Councillor Whitcroft.
Yes, just on one specific item, the LGA on updates on member training. We do have a new councillor who's come in, who's recently elected in a by-election, who will be undertaking member training. I don't know whether it's worth just flagging up, maybe getting some first-hand feedback from Councillor Moroney to see whether there is anything York specific that we could focus on for this, just to give us a bit of, feels like a long time since I did my member training. I know it wasn't all that long ago, but yeah, might be something worth flagging up.
Yeah, we can certainly pick that up, Chair.
Okay, any other issues? Councillor Rose.
Only because there were two things on public participation that you said would pick up under this work plan. So picking them both up, I agree this agenda is small. We're an hour in and we're basically done. Just noting that point, I think maybe draft annual accounts could have come here, or that maybe there were some things on here that we could have brought earlier. With hindsight, I don't know, but I certainly agree with that. I don't know what your intention was, Chair, around the conversation around independence and their disconcerted comments at the last committee on whether you wanted that to be a future item on the agenda, or why you thought it would fit into work plan. But I just wanted to make sure we didn't forget to bring up.
If I can, Chair, the intention is to bring a specific paper on that to the next meeting, so that members can explore the comments that have been made and what response they need to put to it.
When you say next meeting,
well, yes, I mean the original intention was to bring it to tonight, and then obviously because of various things it's slipped back to the 31st, but we can bring it on the 31st. And indeed, I mean, you'll see from the fact the independent person isn't here, it wouldn't have been convenient for him tonight. So it will be convenient on the 31st. He's aware that that's the likely date for it. So
okay, it just wasn't mentioned when we were just talking about the 31st. So just making sure that if that is I wasn't aware that was a thing we were discussing bringing as a full item. That was all. So I'll leave that to the chair to figure out around agenda items offline. Good luck.
Okay, there's nothing else. I'll close the meeting now. Thank you.